Right, well, we've got loads to talk about with England, haven't we, after what's happened in the last few days and the way that Thomas Tuchel has spoken and been so open. Let's start then with this idea of the bomb squad, the finishers. It's a thing that's come from rugby, hasn't it, really? The South African rugby team used to put a lot of their big-name players on the bench, bring him on as the so-called bomb squad. Looks like Tuchel is kind of going down this angle, isn't it? I mean, is this the future for England? It doesn't really matter who starts. He could put some of the big players on the bench and just bring him on with half an hour to go.
I'm not so sure. Look, there's always been impact substitutes. You know, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for Manchester United was the key to it. Teddy Sheringham before him. There's always been that in football. This is nothing new. The problem is, look, I like an awful lot of what Thomas Tuchel's doing. I think he's trying some good stuff. I think we'll talk some more detail about the way he changed his formations and changed his tactics last night. But I think he has to be careful with some of the language that he uses. You know, I asked him directly a couple of weeks ago if he's got a problem with Jude Bellingham. Is there a problem with that relationship? Yeah. He said, no, categorically not. And we're going to talk about Jude Bellingham in some more detail as well. But when he says things like players, it was good to see the players that weren't in the starting 11 leaving their egos to one side. Everybody thinks he means Jude Bellingham. And Jude Bellingham thinks he means Jude Bellingham.
Foden?
Nah.
It means Jude Bellingham. Because he is the Galactico. He's the star when he's in that England camp. And I think he's got to be careful, because this is Thomas Tuchel, who in June said that his mother finds Jude Bellingham repulsive. And it was a big call to leave him out last night. And we're going to go on to Bellingham. I don't want to talk about it now. But this idea of finishers, I don't think Jude Bellingham and other players like that and Phil Foden are going to be happy sitting on the bench. The impact that Phil Foden is having for Manchester City now, to say, right, you're brilliant for your club, but we're going to keep you on the bench. Jude Bellingham, you've scored 3 goals in the last 5 games, started every single game for Real Madrid. You're on the bench. They're not going to be happy with that. They're not going to buy into that long term. At the moment, Thomas Tuchel is doing it to make a point. He's saying that nobody is safe. Everybody, irrespective of the quality that you are, has to turn up and fight for England and earn your place. I get that. That's good. But he's got to be careful with the language he uses, otherwise he might ostracise some of these big players.
Can I just say, though, guys, like, no player likes being on the bench, whether it's Jude Bellingham, whether it's Phil Foden, and this terminology...
Is it impossible to sell that to a player?
And I agree with what Rob said. It is about Jude Bellingham. I know these people have... And I'm so glad we're on together today, because I think we have similar opinions on this, because I think Thomas Tuchel has created this situation with Jude Bellingham that didn't need to be created. There are players at clubs that do think they're bigger than the club or do think they're bigger than the country, but that needs to stay internal. Who's to say? I think with Jude Bellingham, now, I sent out a tweet yesterday and it literally had so much response, good, the bad, the ugly, you know, as we know, X can be at times. But I think, you know, for me, whether you're a starter, whether you're a finisher, like, we've had this terminology in women's football for a long time, finishers. I'm like, I'm on the bench.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Like, whether I'm starting or finishing, it might be...
Did it make you feel any better to be called a finisher?
It didn't make me feel better, because I'm a sub. So whatever you can do to gain those margins, you know, if it's an extra 10% within a squad, that makes you feel better that you're a finisher. And I don't look at it like the finishers are the better players. I don't think it's coming from that place, because the way we've used it in women's football is that it's another word of saying a sub to make the subs feel better. So it's not necessarily like, you know, the finishers are the ones that are going to finish the game off and they're better. And I agree with what Rob said about the terminology, like, that he is using. Trust me, playing for England, we were kind of told everything to say and not to say on a tactics board after a game, you know, to the media, and that's the reality. The fact that Thomas Tuchel has got so much to say and the players are not allowed to say anything to kind of defend themselves, like, the language that he's using, I agree with Rob, I don't like it. And I think it's creating a narrative that doesn't need to be created, because Jude Bellingham and Phil Foden are some of the best players in the world. And in England, we have this ability to bring people up to then knock them back down again. Historically, did it with Wayne Rooney, David Beckham. Over the years, it is what English people do to the best players, and that's the reality. But for me, Jude Bellingham is one of the best players in the world. He's gone to Real Madrid. He's doing amazing things. And I said it yesterday, if he's not in that 11 for England at the World Cup, we've got no chance.
In this case, though, Rob, could Tuchel not look at it and say, well, actually, it's worked, because Jude Bellingham came on and had a really good 30 minutes. He looked really, really motivated when he came in number 10 position.
Well, I said in our match blog last night, it was a no-lose situation, for Thomas Tuchel, having dropped Jude Bellingham. Because if Morgan Rogers has a stormer and Jude Bellingham comes on and doesn't impact the game, he goes, there you go, told you so. If Jude Bellingham comes on and does what he did and impact the game, he says, see, look, I've motivated him. It was a no-lose for the England manager in that situation.
And no disrespect, it's against Serbia, no disrespect. But let's do this against Italy or Spain. You know, we're playing against opposition. Yeah, Thomas Tuchel's only lost one game against Senegal, but these oppositions, Rob, like that we're playing against, we should beat them, right?
We should, but look, I'm going to take a step back because you and I do agree on a lot of the language that Thomas Tuchel uses. Which, look, from a journalist point of view, we've got a story every day. And it's great, and I'm sure the fans, I've seen them phoning in on this show with their voice notes and messaging as well. Everybody's got an opinion. He's created that, but he's created this narrative around Jude Bellingham, which I think is massively unnecessary. But I do like his message that I can't crowbar all these best players into my starting 11. Some big names have got to miss out, and that's what he's doing. He's preparing the ground here for some, when we get the World Cup squad next May, some big names being left out. The bottom line is, you look at the number 10s, Bellingham, Foden, Cole Palmer, who nobody's talking about because he's injured
he's almost
right
a forgotten man now, Cole Palmer.
He'll be fit.
Bizarrely.
He'll be fit in time for the
And
World Cup, and he has to go.
Yeah.
So who are you going to leave out? Morgan Gibbs-White, Morgan Rogers, Eberechi Eze. They're all play number 10 for their teams, and they're fantastic. They can't all go. So I quite like these saying, look, some of these huge players, we can't fit into the squad. But I think he's got to be careful about the way he does it.
Keep your messages coming in, just like Wayne, who said, I know you can only beat what's in front of you, but England haven't faced any big nations under Tuchel. Nothing impressive about it yet. And I think Leanne agrees with you, Wayne. Right, let's move on to Phil Foden playing as a false nine, shall we? Let's hear what Tuchel had to say about it after the match first.
He can play against any opponent on this position. I like to have him in the center of the pitch. I like to have him around, surrounded with close connections with other players. And that's maybe his main strength in the moment. And he did well. I had the idea several months ago, because I played against Phil in these kind of positions. I have the feeling in Premier League some years ago, and it was really, really tough with his little movements, counter movements, little runs. When we made the long list with 50, 60 players, of course, his outstanding quality, and I was hoping we nominated him for first camp, and then he had a difficult spell at City, and now he came back. For City, he plays actually in a deeper role, almost like as an 8. So let's see where this is all going. In matches where we need to unlock a deep opponent, can always be a choice.
Right, well, Foden spoke to ITV at full time, saying, I thought I did well, created a few chances, and unlucky not to put a couple away. Overall, I have to be happy with the impact. I can play multiple positions, and I was happy to come on as a false 9. I enjoyed it. Maybe it will get the best out of me. Only time will tell. Rob, what do you reckon? How did that experiment go?
I thought it worked pretty well, to be honest, and I don't think Leanne's going to agree with me on this one.
That's okay. We can still be friends.
That's part of the show. We don't want you to agree.
The bottom line is, Harry Kane is one of the best strikers that the world has ever seen. And he's absolutely flying at the moment. 26 goals for club and country this season. He's breaking all records. It's extraordinary. But if he is not available because of injury, if he is not able to play, the drop-off for England is huge. And I mean, no disrespect.
But do you not want like for like?
Well, the closest is probably Danny Welbeck, but with all due respect to Danny Welbeck, 6 goals in the Premier League, flying, great season, turns 35 in a week's time. Hasn't played for England for 7 years. If that's the best option we've got for the World Cup, then I'm sorry, we're in trouble. And so, look...
It means you have to change your style, though, does it?
No,
like,
but
if you have Foden as your backup, you've got to completely change your style.
My point is, if Welbeck's the best option we've got, or Ollie Watkins, who I think is fantastic and has proved himself... Or Ivan Toney, they are not in Harry Kane's class. And I think Thomas...
But not many people are.
Yeah.
No, nobody is. And so I think Thomas Tuchel has recognised that. And he's saying, look, if we don't have Harry Kane, we can go with another striker. But what do we lose by doing that? Let's look at other options. And I tell you what, when he brought Phil Foden on last night, when midway through the first half he changed the tactics and he said, Harry Kane, drop deep. He dropped 20 yards, Harry Kane. I've never seen it before in his life. Started playing like a quarterback. Serbia didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to react. And OK, you say it's Serbia. I think some of the top nations would have had a game plan, expected to play up against Harry Kane, and suddenly it changes. They didn't have an answer to Phil Foden. He played a little bit deeper than Harry Kane, played in that pocket, picked up the ball on the half-turn and looked really, really dangerous. That's why he set up the goal for Eberechi Eze late on. So I quite like that he's trying that. I think this is the time to try that. Yeah. I'm not against it, and I thought Phil Foden did really well. But a penny for your thoughts on, Leanne, on what Phil Foden is thinking, by the way. Because a couple of days ago, Thomas Tuchel said, you're not a winger. You're not going to get a place in my side as a winger. And by the way, we've got too many number 10s, so you might not get in as a number 10. And then 2 days later, he says, go on as a striker. How are you going to do as a number 9?
Yeah.
I get it. But I wonder what Phil Foden's thinking when he's having a fantastic season for Manchester City and he's got to try and adapt the way he plays in his position.
But this is what I'm saying, though, Rob. It's a lot of talking. Do you know what I mean? And I think for Phil Foden, he played in the 9. He did it at City when they won the league. you know, Pep Guardiola played that whole season without a number 9 and put Phil Foden in there. When you asked me that question at the top of the show, do I think he can play there? Yes. Do I want him to play there? No. Now, the bigger problem is, why have we got 20 number 10s and literally only Harry Kane in the number 9? That's the biggest problem. That can't, and it's a world problem.
Well, that's a deeper problem.
It is, no, but even in world football, you know, you could list off 20 number 9s in world football years ago. Now, you know, Victor Osimhen and Isak, every time someone can move on for a lot of money, they go for a high premium because that position's become obsolete. I think for someone like Phil Foden, I think he's one of the most technically gifted players I've seen, probably since Joe Cole, those types of players. You can tell he loves football, but it's like, where is he going to play in this team? Now, the manager coming out speaking the night before, well, we're not going to play Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden in that position with Harry Kane. We're not going to do it. OK, Rob, here's the other question. Why would you not do Phil Foden from the beginning in the game in the 9? Because we've already qualified for the World Cup. So isn't this the time to be trying things?
There are apparent contradictions in what Thomas Tuchel says. I mean, I'll just give you one example. At the pre-match news conference, he was asked whether everybody's fit. So, yeah, everybody's fit and available. And then to one of the radio interviews, 10 minutes later, he said, actually, Morgan Rogers has got a bit of a tight hamstring. It might be... So we thought, OK, Morgan Rogers, he's paving the way for Jude Bellingham to come back in. No, Bellingham's on the bench and Morgan's in. And he said before that pre-match news conference, I'm not going to put square pegs in round holes. I am not going to play players out of position. Phil Foden's a number 9. It's like, I get it. I get what he's trying to do. But sometimes he ties himself up in knots with what he's saying.
That's what I'm saying, though. Does he need to keep telling everybody that? Just do what you're doing. You're the England manager. It's not an easy job. We all think we're the manager every time a tournament comes around, picking the best team, and it's not an easy job being the England manager. But I don't need him to continuously keep talking about what he's going to do.
I quite like that.
Well, you would. That's your job.
It's mine and Matt's job.
Yeah,
we all
of
love
course.
it. Just going back to that number 9 issue. So if Phil Foden is not going to be the backup for Harry Kane, who is going to be the next? If you were choosing right now, who is the number 9 backup that you're taking to America?
I mean, personally, I'm taking Ivan Toney, but people might think that's crazy. But I don't think Ollie Watkins has been in form this season. I like Ollie Watkins, but he hasn't been in form. But I think, even though he didn't ask me this question, I want to rewind a minute, right? Because Morgan Rogers, beginning of the season, was having a poor season at Villa. And I like Morgan Rogers. And this goes back to when I played, if a manager wants to play you, doesn't matter how you're performing, when they say, oh, he's had a good week in training, that's absolutely ridiculous. That doesn't work. If a manager wants you, they want you. Now, thankfully for Morgan Rogers, Thomas Tuchel loves him. And he is a good player, and I like him. But then Jude comes back in, and it's like, oh, he's been injured, oh, he's not been in form. Well, Morgan Rogers, the beginning of the season, ask any Villa fan, I've done a lot of their Europa League games, he wasn't at the races. And he'll tell you that himself, but he's still starting for England. So I don't like this whole, oh, it's a like for Morgan Rogers and Jude Bellingham. You can see they have a good relationship. You know, they hug and all that off the pitch. But, like, I just don't like the fact... I think you have to fit your best players. If Pep Guardiola was the England manager, do you honestly believe that Jude Bellingham would be in conversation of not even being on the plane, let alone starting? Like, it blows my mind. As you can tell, it heats me.
Yeah, we can see it heating all of us up here.
coming out my ears.